talk to you tonight about a project that doesn't exist, but if it did, it could involve everybody in this room. It could involve your friends. It could involve their friends. It could go global. It could be viral. It could be wonderful. But before I get into the 3D adventures of Henry and Balley, I want to tell you a little bit about what was behind the idea. About 9 months ago, I was at TEDx Midwest, and between the big ideas and the small food, I looked up and I thought, oh my God, this room is full of really interesting people doing really interesting things. And I realized that for the past several years, most of my professional opportunities have been from either coast and from Europe, and I had no idea what was going on in Chicago. Oh goodness, I'm way ahead of myself. Anyway, so I had no idea what was going on in Chicago, so I'm off my rhythm. I decided I needed to find out. I put on my journalist hat, and if it said creative, innovative, entrepreneur, whatever, I showed up and was just looking to see what was going on in Chicago. And I found two things. One, that there was a lot going on in Chicago. This is a real moment in the city. There's a lot happening here. There's a terrific energy. But I also discovered that the creatives, the artists and architects and designers were very separate and didn't really mix with the techs and entrepreneurs. And this is not a good thing. There's something called STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And this has long been sought after as this is what you want in your educational system. This is where the economy of the 21st century is going to be based. But in recent times, they've added an A to it, and the A is for art. And when you add art, you end up getting STEAM. And STEAM turns out to have an alchemy to it. And this is what drove Steve Jobs' genius. This is why MIT's Media Lab is such a gusher of innovation. This is why Brooklyn is constantly reinventing itself. But this doesn't really happen in Chicago. We have this real separation going on. Even in a place like Shreveport, Louisiana, there's a little studio called Moonbot, which was started by an ex-Pixar guy, and their first film out of the gate just won an Oscar, and they've become a real center, a real draw for arty types and tech types. But in Chicago, we have this, division. And I began to wonder why this was. Was it that we physically all couldn't get together? Was it bad traffic? Was it unsafe public transport? Was it, those goddamn parking meters? And then I began thinking, what would be a platform that would really allow the people who are so talented across so many disciplines to really collaborate on something wonderful? And in my background, I actually have a fairly deep background in children's media. And one of the things that's wonderful about children's media is that it is always at the edge of art and technology. And at the same time that I was thinking about this and thinking about a couple of projects that I knew that were happening and very successful elsewhere, I also saw a news story that just intrigued me about maker spaces being built in public libraries. And the idea of these 3D printers near books, things started to juggle, and I began to think about a children's book, a digital book, that would have within it 3D printable parts. So the patterns would be embedded in the book. You could download it if you had a MakerBot. You could create the pattern. And I began to riff with this idea a little bit and thinking, well, we have so much talent in tech. We have so much talent in art here. How would we put this together? We need to start with a story. So the 3D adventures of Henry and Balley. It's fairly simple. Henry is 7 years old. Balley has these many different colors, so you can always tell him who he is. It is his favorite ball. And the story starts with 3 sort of fantasy scenes where Henry is throwing, 10 home runs or 4 touchdowns or whatever, and you can always tell it's Balley because of the stripes. And everything is going swimmingly until you hear Henry's mommy off stage saying, "Henry, it's time for lunch." So Henry dutifully puts Balley up on a shelf, heads toward the door, and out of the corner of his eye, he sees Balley move just a little bit. And he turns, and Balley starts to develop a little bit of a face and bounces down and comes over to him. And, Henry's eyes are huge. He can't believe this. Balley heads over to a far wall, and then he heads back to Henry. He bounces with determination. He heads back toward the wall. Henry follows him. The wall turns Balley colors. It opens up. They walk through it, and they're in Balley's room, where everything is circular or spherical, including the iPad, because Balley would have one. And Balley heads over to a wall that has all of these framed things, and I can tell that my time is up because she's gone. I tell you, 5 minutes isn't what it used to be, but if you go to there used to be a number up there, or a blog up there. If you go to trekkernews.tumblr.com, you can actually read about it. There's also a website for collaborative storytelling. And apparently, I'm just Pachakachaw length. That's all there is to it.